And right when you thought you were done with draft talk, I am back with Emory Hunt. Omar Kelly from the Miami Herald here on Dolphins in Depth, the podcast provided to you by Miami Herald. Emory Hunt, draft evaluator, college analyst for CBS. Emory, we had you on before the draft, and now you were my favorite guest after the draft last year because you helped me understand some of these undrafted rookies. You helped me see the vision, see the scope. And we're definitely going to get into that today. But before we do that, I need your take on the Shedeur Sanders slide. I've written a column in the Miami Herald explaining my viewpoint, and I'm not even going to trample on your. I want to give you the runway to explain to me what happened to Shedeur Sanders, who was your top-rated quarterback in the draft. Why did he go in the 5th round, in your opinion?
I'm glad you asked that question. This was so multi-layered, and I laid out the blueprint Friday morning on CBS Sports HQ before anybody got wind and caught on to what I was actually saying. And then by Saturday morning, everybody was all over the same thing I was on earlier the day before. So hear me out. First of all, I'll say this. Anybody that tells you his slide was film related or evaluation related is lying and gaslighting you, because nothing about his film said 5th round, right? And even if you thought his film said late 1st, 2nd, I may not agree.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that makes more sense than round 5.
Yeah.
What I said Friday morning after the 1st round was this. This was more about a power play from the NFL as opposed to a player evaluation play. Because think about what we're coming off of. Nico Iamaleava of Tennessee, a starting quarterback at a Power 4 blue blood program, held out. And it's like, wait a minute.
Didn't even connect those two. Didn't connect. You come on, bring it home. Bring it home like a pastor.
Exactly. So now we're cooking with gas, right? So the NFL sees this. First of all, there's no guardrails in college. So this Power 4 quarterback of the blue blood program, coming off a playoff appearance, holds out, wants more money. What we now see in the NIL space in college, that this is a situation where the players have more power than the universities, and they're using their power to their advantage, which I love. And so if you're the NFL, if college football is not going to do anything, think about this. Now, so that's one element. Now, the second element, this draft class had about 15 to 16 former NFL players' sons in this class. So that's one element that we now know there's going to be more players' sons that's going to be coming down the pike.
Yeah, but they've always come down the pike. Look,
but here now I'm about to connect the two. So now you have one of the most polarizing players, Shedeur Sanders, one of the most polarizing coaches, legend NFL player, Hall of Famer and Coach Prime, and his son is playing a quarterback position. Now let's string all these three together. If we allow the player to dictate where he goes, we now become the NBA. NFL does not want to become the NBA where the players have the power.
Absolutely.
And college football players have the power now.
Yeah.
NFL remains where the players don't have the power. And it was not even about Shedeur. It was more about the idea of what Shedeur represents.
So hold on. You don't think any of the entitlement talk, any of the he's never won a starting spot, he'd always handed it to his daddy. You don't think him allegedly taking a FaceTime call during a team meeting or having a bad meeting with the Giants had anything to do with that? Because here's my thought process on Shedeur, and we talked about this from the very get-go.
Hold on, let me answer your question, because you can't just ask a question and then just So to answer your question, nothing to do with it, right? Because as a journalist, I'm like, why are we getting one perspective consistently? No one finds it weird that everything that we've heard has coming from multiple people, right? Multiple reporters have all been the same thing, following the same bullet points and blueprint. Like, why are we getting one consistent perspective from multiple? That doesn't sound weird?
No, especially when you know how the sausage gets made. You know that's coming from one, maybe two teams. But this is why you should let me finish my point, okay? We had 4 teams that clearly needed or could have or should have addressed quarterback, and they all did, except for Pittsburgh. They kind of waited late. But keep in mind, and this is what I say all the time, who is the most blackety black NFL team in the NFL? It's the Steelers, right?
Right.
Minority GM, Mike Tomlin is the head coach, the longest tenured coach in all of sports. Okay, so who hired Brian Flores when the entire NFL was turning their back on Brian Flores? It was Mike Tomlin. So if there's anybody who's going to buck the trend, the Steelers don't even have a quarterback. They still waiting on Aaron Rodgers in case he still hasn't even committed to playing football yet. And they didn't pass. They passed him in round 1. Understandable. Passed him in round 3. Understandable. I'm not sure if they had a shot at him in 5th or 4th. I think they passed him in round 4. And I get it. Steelers going to steal it. They're going to do what they do. But they saw his drastic slide, and they didn't even decide to save him. They said, Will Howard is our guy. He was picked after Shedeur. But if Shedeur was still there, would they have drafted him in the 5th? No? You say no?
Because think about it. That you're making my point. Why would they, of all teams, pass on him? Why would the Browns take a quarterback before taking Shedeur? So it has nothing to do with performance or what we've heard out of me. We've seen worse. Hold
on. Don't say we've seen worse. Okay. Not Baker Mayfield. Johnny Manziel might have been worse. Okay?
I'm not even talking about quarterback. I'm talking about player prospect in terms of like person off the field stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like
no. And that's what I'm talking about. Johnny Manziel. That to me, that's a fair, equal, comparable comparison. And somebody rescued Johnny in the 1st, the Cleveland Browns, and then he played more Xbox than he actually studied film. But when I realized, and I wrote a column about this, when I realized Shedeur might not be in the 1st round, when he showed up at his party, legendary $sign with the 2. I get it. Cute marketing. And was wearing a hubcap, a diamond encrusted hubcap, with a $sign on his chest, and handed and gifted $1 million in a Louis Vuitton bag. The one thing I've always known about NFL teams is they're okay with other players in other positions being a show me, being it about them, look at me. They're not okay with quarterbacks with that mentality. They're not okay with quarterbacks with that behavior. And I think not just that, but the Dion part, then the entitlement part. Oh, we don't want to play for certain teams. We only want to play for the teams that we want to play for. I think I always believe this. A player is better off with an agent. I include Lamar Jackson, MVP Lamar Jackson. You telling me MVP Lamar Jackson wouldn't have had offers if his mom wasn't his agent back when Baltimore was a free agent? He had no offers. The MVP of the league had no offers.
I'm glad you brought, because hear me out. There's 2 things, right? This is why you're still making my point, Omar. Here's the thing. When you look at the Lamar situation, right, and saying he needs an agent, why does he need an agent? Because
the league says he does.
System, control,
yes.
Right? And we've seen the NFL do this before.
We're not very far.
We're across the street on the same highway. We're just arguing different points. It's like, because we've seen the league do this before, make a statement, right? They did this with Kaepernick. They did this with Tim Tebow. They did this with Kerry Rhodes. They did this with, you know what I'm saying? Other players were like, wait a minute. We can't, like they did.
We can't allow you to have control.
Exactly. Right. And so we control things. And so that's what, and to the point that we're both making, I believe, is that the quarterback position isn't allowed to be, the person can't be bigger than the position. The personality can't be only that position.
Or the team.
But only that position.
Yeah.
So if because this is an extension of ownership, coaching. It's a marketing
It's
position,
a face
right?
of franchise.
And so when you look, that's why Lamar fell too. That was a point they were making. Like Lamar should have went first.
I'm not talking about when Lamar fell. I'm
No,
talking
no,
about
I'm saying like,
yeah.
I'm just talking about even that. Listen, when he shouldn't have fell, number one. But then when how often have we seen teams put out statements, we're good at quarterback, we're not interested in Lamar Jackson. We've never seen nothing like that. So that's another example of control and state. So I thought this was just not even about Shedeur the player, because the tape says he should have went round 1. But the
top 50.
Everybody had him as QB2. Everybody had him in the top 40. So him falling past 40 was something that should have raised a lot of eyebrows. Like, oh, this ain't even about the game. This is about a statement.
Yes. I also, and you brought up the great point about Nico, the NIL culture, I think, because I've heard privately constant complaints about the NIL culture and its impact and influence on NFL. Like now, because in college athletics, you don't like your coach, he talking bad to you. I'm gone. I'm transferring. I don't want to be coached too hard. Or, I perform my contract. I need a raise. In the NFL, you are locked into your salary slot for 4 years. You can't even be negotiate. It's 3 years. You're locked in for 3 years. You can't even negotiate. They paying you what you are slotted to make. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And now this NIL culture is challenging things. And you know who was the highest NIL grossing player? It was Shedeur Sanders. You know who has a reality series or every move he makes is documented? Shedeur Sanders. They can't afford for more Shedeur Sanderses to come in through up the NFL pipeline, especially at quarterback. They don't even like the Micah Parsons of the world doing podcasts on a regular basis now, or streaming or live streaming or twitching, because it's not about them. It's not about the league. It's about the player. And you're correct. You're 1,000% correct. The last thing the NFL wants is to become the NBA, because they look down on the NBA like,
right.
Yeah, this player run league.
Like, because think about it. Like, this the other part too that was kind of like the icing on the cake for me in thinking this way was when the whole Nico situation went down. I was like, oh, I threw it out there right away. I was like, if I'm the UFL or CFL, I'm reaching out immediately, because obviously you can get some endorsements to kind of supplement the salary, because clearly these bridges are burned. Like, ain't no college coach gonna touch them. But what happened? UCLA, boom. So it shows you the player. It shows other players like, oh, I can get up out my situation. This is gonna be somebody that, you know what I'm saying.
If you're good,
but at that position, you can only play one. So if you're good enough, you're gonna have a market. And so I just underestimated that a team. I thought these college football coaches would have stuck together and like, yeah, nah, we ain't.
Somebody got to win. Somebody got to say their job.
Exactly.
And that's what I don't understand about the NFL, though. Look at the New Orleans Saints, and I want to move off the Shedeur Sanders situation. New Orleans would have been a perfect venue for him, because you know how I feel about the arm. It's okay. It would be better in a dome situation. It would be better playing in warm climates. And I know he played in Colorado. That's great. But the arm is Tua-esque. It's just baseline. It's just good enough. For New Orleans, with a new head coach, a former quarterback who is quite similar to Shedeur, to say thanks but no thanks, round after round after round. For Pittsburgh, who doesn't even have a quarterback and realistically doesn't really have a number 2, to say thanks but no thanks. I understand there was beef with the Giants. It clashed, and it wasn't. Giants are not a great situation for him, especially when you struggle. Your head coach going to be replaced. Next thing you know, you got Deion Sanders as the next head coach of the Giants, or that's the talk. But for all of those quarterback needy, thirsty teams, even the Miami Dolphins, don't act like we didn't play 4 quarterbacks last year. In the 5th round, they said, we thought about it, but then you chose Jordan Phillips, who arguably, I'm guessing Jordan Phillips isn't even a top 100 player on your board. No disrespect to Jordan Phillips, but you're saying we're going to pass on player number 50, even if he's on your board, because he had to be on their board for them to consider it. Chris Greer is not a liar. He's not going. If he's not on your board, you're going to say he wasn't on our board. Well, actually, he might have wanted to avoid it, but he said there was a nice, lengthy discussion about it. And they said, "Nah, let me get that nose tackle." So you're telling me Shedeur isn't a 120 player on your board, and you needed a number 3 quarterback? Really?
That again, that you're making my point. Like, so that tells you that this wasn't about play. This was about everybody got that memo. Like, hey man, don't touch this dude until. And then I even joked about this on day 3. I was like, you know what? Because everybody's now starting to talk about, oh, is this collusion or this? I was like, watch the league just to throw this out there, like they did with Kaepernick. Like, oh, we offered him a workout. Yeah, come work out. Watch they draft Shiloh before they draft Shedeur, so he could be like, "Oh, see,
No.
we're not blackballing. Like we draft." Like, I said, watch the league do that, right? But not,
that would have been funny. And I found it hilarious for the team that his father flat out said he didn't want him to go to be the team that drafted him, even though they drafted another quarterback too. I thought that was hilarious.
Right. That's
but anyway,
that was my whole stance on the whole thing. I didn't even think it was about the player. It is more about what the player represents, and that's something they had to really. If college football not going to do anything, we'll do something.
Okay, let's get into this Dolphins draft. Let's get to some of the early round picks. So the Kenneth Grant. Some people would say selected too high. I would disagree. I thought he was number 1 nose tackle, a very hard position to find. I loved his film watching his teammate Mason Graham. Where do you evaluate Kenneth Graham? How do you see him contributing in his rookie season?
I thought this was an A+ pick. He was my number 2 nose tackle, but I had an 80 grade on him.
Who was number 1?
Number 1 for me, I'll tell you right now, because when you talk about nose tackles, they are hard to find, and because I grade so many, number 1 nose tackle was Jamari Caldwell out of Oregon, who had an 80 grade. So I had both guys with 80 grades. So you could say 1 or 2 tied, 1A, 1B, whatever. But, this was a good pick because I feel like the Dolphins have been looking for this guy since Raekwon Davis was there. Once they lost that anchor in the middle, the defense kind of faltered. They got pass rushers out the yin yang. And so getting Grant kind of will now help those pass rushers do what they are allowed to do best, while also being a very good player. We saw him help out Mason Graham, and help him develop into a top 5 player. Grant is going to be an outstanding pick. I thought he was fantastic fit and need for that Dolphins defense.
Jonah, now we get to the controversial pick, and I know how I feel about it because I always have the conviction, if you like a guy, go get a guy. Because who cares what you give up for him? Nobody can even tell you what the Chiefs gave up for Patrick Mahomes. You don't remember. Nobody remembers that Baltimore traded into the first round to get Lamar Jackson. You don't remember what you gave up. You just know you got an MVP. So they selected Jonah. It's a struggle to say.
Sabanaya.
I don't think that's it, but I will take that. I've always been saying Sabanaya, but somebody yesterday corrected me, and it's a little weird, but I can't get it yet. Jonah, they traded their day 2. They traded all their day 2 assets to move up 11 spots to get Jonah. How do you see him in the caliber of talent, offensive lineman? I've always said they needed a day 1 starter. Everybody in the NFL says there's only 10 offensive linemen who are day 1 starters. And I said they gotta go get one. If they don't walk out of this draft with that, and they got Liam Eichenberg starting, you screwed up. So they went and they got him. Do you like the player? Do you like the fit?
I love the fit, and here's why. And the player makes sense too. He was a left tackle at Arizona, and so
left tackle, right tackle, left guard, right guard. Yeah, he played all 4 positions.
So you put him inside because now it works because his length isn't an issue. And so when you combine now he's playing inside with the fact that he played tackle at a high level for Arizona, he has tackle feet with the ability to, which means he's going to be probably your best pass protector as a guard, because he's now inside. He has core strength. He has good footwork and movement skills. It all makes sense. This offensive line is about movement. This offense is about movement. And now you got a guy that has starting tackle experience that is going to fit in perfectly as a guard because he's built like one. This makes sense for the Dolphins, which is why I love the fit here and the player that they chose. And to your point, you're exactly right. I'm the same way. no one cares in week 9 if he's balling how much they gave up for him. They just want to know if the player is balling.
That's true. But then in day 3, they did something quite interesting where they traded away their early day 3 picks, got an extra 5th, and to pick up a 3rd rounder in next year's draft. Now, to trade away your 2nd and your 3rd round and your 4th round picks in a draft where the meat was there, that was where the meat was. Your thought, especially, and you need a cornerback. You okay with that approach?
Here's the thing: when you combine what they did in terms of who they drafted at corner, Jason Marshall, big fan of his. He was my number 7 boundary corner. And then as an undrafted free agent, they bring in B.J. Adams, who's my number 9 boundary corner. And I had the same grade for Marshall and B.J. Adams or Brandon Adams. So this was a good move. Because of your point, the meat of the draft was here. But because we had such a large class due to this was the last of the COVID years, you're going to have a large crop of undrafted free agents that would have been draft picks in other classes. So they probably saw a little bit of foresight, like, okay, we can draft the guy that we like, which they did, and Marshall. We can get some other guys that we're working the phones on, got an eye on. And if we need to, we can jump back into the draft and get somebody else, just to secure the rights. But they did a good job in terms of getting 2 guys of the same, like Marshall Trader, the free safety out of Maryland, was fantastic. He was my number 3 free safety. So I love what they did, man. Yeah, I'm telling you, the Dolphins got an A draft in my eyes, based on whom they drafted, where I had the grades, and also these undrafted guys that I think can have an impact. This is a really good class that kind of helps fill that. They got 2 starters that they needed right away, but they also got the guys that's going to help strengthen that second wave. And now you got good rotational depth with solid players. So I love what they did.
Now, you said that Jason Marshall Jr. was your 7th cornerback for boundary.
Mm-hmm.
Inconsistent in college. 5-star athlete, so the athleticism is there, but they didn't deliver interceptions. What was it that made him stand out to you? 39 college starts, but really very minimal interceptions.
Here's the thing, and you can see the theme with the Dolphins and what they're trying to accomplish. There's a perception that they're soft. So what did they do? Kenneth Grant, Marshall, undrafted free agent B.J. Adams. And when I'm talking specifically about Marshall and B.J. Adams, physical, press corners. Let's get in your face. Let's man up. Let's fight these dudes. Trader, smart, instinctive, great angles. He helps replace what they lost. And the kid that went to the Giants, right?
Javon Holland,
So he can match up and play, and he's also a very good run defender, physical. And when you think about the receivers, you're thinking about some undrafted guys. He got big body guys. They brought in Theo Weiss from Missouri, Andrew Armstrong from Arkansas. These are big physical receivers. Jalen Conyers, the tight end from Texas Tech, 263, carries that rather well, flex tight end. But I feel like the Dolphins went out and said, we're tired of being perceived as soft. So we're going to up the physicality. Ollie Gordon, the running back, physical. You know what I'm saying? So they was and think about the 1, 2, 3 D tackles. Zeke Biggers, probably one of the strongest dudes up front. He was my number 5 nose tackle. So they doubled down on interior defensive tackles and was like, we are tired of being pushed around or being perceived as a team that gets pushed around. We're going to go bring the fight. Jonah, you talked about physical, aggressive, blocks through the whistle. This to me was to your point, your question about Marshall. This was a physicality play. He's a press corner. They want to tie up these wide receivers. Because if you think about what the game is now, RPO, timing, quick, get the ball out quickly, right? Best way to combat that, tie up these receivers at the line of scrimmage to guys that could press. And they went out and got guys that could press.
Definitely. Let me get you. You talked about Ollie Gordon. I did not do any film on a running back. I knew they'd select a running back, but I knew they'd just throw one on the pile. Mike McDaniel has amongst his peers, he's a well-respected evaluator of the backs. Could Ollie Gordon end up being an NFL starter, in your opinion?
Absolutely, man. Like, if you just don't forget how to run the ball at a high clip like he did. Like last year was like 1,700 yards, and this year their offensive line stunk. Just to put it nicely, there was one play in particular I remember against Utah where quarterback turns around to hand the ball off, and the quarterback only sees Ollie Gordon, but Ollie Gordon sees 5 red helmets, and it's like, damn, they ain't blocked nobody. You know what I'm saying? Like, so that was going on with Oklahoma State a lot this past season. And then you start to see the old Ollie Gordon against BYU, where you remember, like, this dude is a Doak Walker Award winner. You go back and look at the track record of Doak Walker winners.
Yeah.
It's a track record of dudes, right? So,
yeah.
And what's underrated about Ollie Gordon, for a bigger back, like 6 feet, 6'1", 225, he is a fantastic vertical threat as a receiver. Like, you could line him up in a slot and run him down the field, and he's comfortable catching over his shoulder, away from his body. This dude can play. And he gives them, again, physical. He gives them what they needed at the position to kind of combat this mentality of, oh, they just speed finesse guys. They went out this offseason, this draft's like, we're going to show folks that we can play tough too. This Aqua ain't, a finesse Aqua. This is a physical Aqua we going out here
with. It's not popsicle cream.
Exactly, right?
Here's the thing about Ollie Gordon that I noticed, and I would love your take on this. Upright runner.
Yeah, very
high.
Yep.
Those don't last. Can he have success, DeMarco Murray style-esque, being an upright runner in the NFL?
Well, therein lies the comparison. I also compared him to a guy like Jeremy Langford, who was also an upright runner that played with the Bears when he came out of Michigan State. So yeah, and it's hard you can't teach guys to run with better pad level. That's just kind of how they run, right? And so to your point, when you're that tall, you're taking on far too much, contact.
Mm-hmm.
He has to be better at being judicious in when and where to take on the contact. What helps him is that he has good acceleration and contact balance. He got better at the balance part this year, because I felt like as a junior, despite him rushing for over 1,700 yards, you could tip him over because they're running too high. His center of gravity is thrown off, but you can't coach the burst, explosiveness, acceleration, which he has, and the fact that he has the ability to be a bull. What's the
bull in time shop?
The lead dog in the
yeah,
he could carry the load, right? More so than other guys around him that are kind of like they can do without volume. He can be the guy, the lead dog in his backfield. I think he has a chance to be a starter here because what he also has, like I said, the ability to catch the ball, which we know will get him on the field early.
Mm-hmm. We're talking to Emory Hunt, one of the best draft evaluators. He does have a draft guide that he puts out annually. Where can they find that, Emory?
Footballgameplan.com/2025 draft guide. It is, again, the best draft guide and largest draft guide out there. Helps keep you honest for the entire season as these rosters,
I keep all my draft guides, because sometimes you get players that are free agents or waiver wire claims, and you want to know what that evaluation said of them in the initial, so you can formulate your opinion. Another guy I want to talk to you, the last draft pick, is Quinn Ewers, Texas quarterback, went in the 7th round. I don't know if many people projected him in the 7th round. I wasn't really wowed over, but I knew what the Dolphins were doing. They're adding a guy that they could put on their practice squad or keep at the back end as a number 3, really to run the scout team offense. Who knows what that player can become in terms of Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy was the last pick in his draft class. Mm-hmm. Now he's going to be a $50 million quarterback. What do you see from Quinn Ewers as an NFL prospect?
He was my number 6 quarterback in the class. And the reason why I became a fan of yours was how it was his mental toughness. And imagine being the starting quarterback at a blue blood program the last 2 seasons when everybody wants to see the guy behind you. And all you do is go out there and play well and lead them to 2 back-to-back postseason appearances. One being in the SEC when everybody was like, oh, Texas is going to the SEC. Oh, they're going to get smashed. Goes through the SEC and gets to the postseason. That you have to be mentally tough. What I think is best for Ewers, I compared him to Kevin Cobb because of this reason. he stays hurt. So I think the best situation for him was to be drafted at this spot by the Dolphins on this team, because I think Zach Wilson looked very good in the Broncos preseason last year. So he's going to be your QB2. Ewers just need to let his body rest. Like, this is going to be he could just not, take on contact, allow his body
learn the position,
gaining weight, gaining muscle, getting his body back right. Because he's been banged up, I want to say, every year in his career. So that's the most consistent thing about his game is his injury history. And so there's flashes where you see, oh, wow, that was a damn good throw by Ewers. And I keep bringing this up 2 years ago. If he doesn't get hurt against Bama, they not only beat Bama, they blow Bama out. And so that's the type of guy that you see, okay, that the flash is there, but can he just continue to stay healthy? This is the ideal spot for him. And I think him just being able to, work on his body, develop his body, stay healthy for a full calendar year without taking on contact is going to be best for him long term. So, yeah, this makes sense. But his mental toughness, I think, is his best attribute.
Now, thank you for saying that, because I'm curious. I get an opportunity to watch them practice, so I'll evaluate them based on what I see in the NFL. And that's the same approach that I take with the undrafted players. As everybody who follows me knows, I don't care. I don't even learn their name. I'm not interested. You could tell me about Andrew Armstrong, who everybody's all excited about, 6'4", 202, leading receiver in the SEC. He didn't get drafted. Why he didn't get drafted? I'm not getting super excited because there's a reason these guys didn't get drafted. We don't know what it is, but there is a reason they didn't get drafted. What can you expect from Anthony Armstrong and guys like A.J. Henning and the Monterey Baldwin from Baylor?
Well, and don't forget Theo Weiss. Theo Weiss is my number 2 inside receiver. Okay. We talk a lot about Luther Burden, and Theo Weiss is out there cooking too. And talk about the theme here: toughness. Theo Weiss, possession guy. Armstrong, possession guy, knows where the sticks are. A.J. Henning, he's a slot guy, but works well versus zone, opens up. He finds the opening, settles down quickly, makes himself available. Possession guy, toughness, physicality, all those things that they're looking for. So I think Weiss has a very good chance. Conyers was my number 7 or number 8 flex tight end. So he's kind of the cross. Like Tanner Connor on the roster was a fantastic find by the Dolphins last 2-3 seasons ago, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy. So when you look at Conyers, has a chance to be that guy, another flex guy, another bigger wide receiver. Eugene Asante, outside linebacker, probably should have been drafted. He was my number 4 outside linebacker in terms of what he sideline to sideline, kind of
4-3 or 3-4.
Outside linebacker in terms of 4-3 designation, because I call those
like outside linebacker guy.
Yeah, perfect. That's what I have him as, a weak side linebacker, not a standbacker.
4-8, yeah,
right. 223. Thought he was going to get drafted, and we talked about B.J. Adams too. So this is a group where they said, hey, we're going to try to get physical. We're going to try to stay on the field, because last year's draft class, you're like, oh, they got a speed everywhere. Speed kills. With Taj Washington and Malik Washington, is like, oh, we're going to try to outrun everybody. But then teams started to be a little bit more physical with them. It's like, we got to stay on the field. And teams are going to just play these, this deep coverage, take away the deep ball. So now you got to work yourself down the field. Well, we need possession guys to help us do that as well. So now you really can't defend us. And I think that's why you saw the receivers that they went out and grabbed as undrafted guys, these bigger physical guys, as opposed to more of the speedy guys that they have in abundance of. Even Nate Noel, the running back of Missouri, great quickness, great elusiveness, but he's more of what they already have on the roster, as opposed to the Ollie Gordon. But I thought when you combine the undrafted free agent class with the draft class, the whole picture now makes sense of what this offseason talent acquisition was all about. Getting tougher, getting more physical, getting bigger, and I think they did that.
Definitely. Well, Emory, I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming and breaking it down on Dolphins in depth. You know your family.
Always, bro.
Last year, I asked you for the quarterback prospects, and you named Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. Give me the early prognostication. Who are the quarterbacks to watch in the college game moving forward?
I'll give you just one, because right now everybody's talking about these other guys, right? I'll give you the one that nobody's talking about. Taylor Green of Arkansas.
Okay.
And I noticed him while grading all these Arkansas prospects. I'm like, bro, this dude looks like a combination of Randall Cunningham and Vince Young.
Runner.
Right. So if he's able to flatline his play, because there were some ups and downs in terms of the consistency, but there are plays you just like, bro, there's no way he can make this play, and he makes the play. And he'll miss the routine play, but he'll make the wild play. But if he flatlines, 6'6", 240 with Gumby-like athleticism, and like when he's running, he looks like an HBCU drum major running down the field. He's so long and tall, just all legs and arms, right? But he has the arm, he has the athleticism, he has the size that they look for, they covet. And I like that he went back to Arkansas and said, you know what, now I'm going, and he's working with Bobby Petrino. We know what Petrino does with quarterbacks.
He does. He does quarterbacks.
So that's the one guy that no one's talking about that I think has a chance to be number one this time next year.
All right. Well, thank you for bringing it to my attention, and I will be watching Arkansas, checking it out. Emory, we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining Dolphins in Depth, and enjoy the rest of your summer, because we got to gear up for that NFL season, and you do college too. So
and I'm doing UFL, so I'm already in the trenches right now.
Oh man, you didn't give yourself no time. You didn't. All right, appreciate you, Emory.